Français, the French corner, and was known as Franschenhoek and briefly as Roubadour before the Dutch version of its name Franschhoek was settled on. The name Cape Town started to be used from 1733. For the sake of the narrative, I have taken certain liberties in my descriptions, topography and the history of Cape Town, Stellenbosch, Drakenstein, Franschhoek and Joubertsgat Bridge. On the question of language, to strike the balance between historical veracity and modern usage, I have used both enslaved and slave when unavoidable within the text. Hottentots Holland remains a place name in the Republic of South Africa. There were many different and shifting groupings within the indigenous peoples of the Cape during the 17th century, and there is much debate among historians and scholars about nomenclature. I have focused on the Khoi and used Khoi and San in the text rather than Khoikhoi or Bushman. When referring to the language, I've also used Khoi rather than Ko or Nama. There is also discussion about the word leader being preferable to chief or headsman. Because this is historical fiction, I have occasionally used headsman as well as clan leader as being more appropriate to the time in which this novel is set. The influence of the Huguenots is extraordinary, a diaspora that took them as skilled immigrants all over the world. One branch of my family also. Every country which accepted the refugees, including the Dutch Republic, England, Ireland and South Africa, was enriched by their presence despite their relatively small numbers. The word refugee comes from refugee, a French word first used to describe the Huguenots. For those listeners who would like a fuller history, I recommend Peter Kurtzen's The Huguenots of South Africa, 1688 to 1988, and Huguenots at the Cape by Philippa van Aert and Elaine Ridge, both published by the Huguenot Society of South Africa. Central to this novel are the operations of the United Dutch East India Company, the VOC, which was established in March 1602, granting it a 21-year monopoly to carry out trade activities in the Far East. Their modus operandi was not to establish colonies, but rather refreshment stations to provide the VOC ships with fresh water and food on their voyages to Batavia, Jakarta, and beyond to places such as China and Japan. The one exception to this was the Cape of Good Hope, which was a colony built on the labour of enslaved people brought from other parts of East and West Africa, as well as from Madagascar, India, and Indonesia. At the heart of the Map of Bones is a belief in the power of words, that unless women's stories and testimonies are included alongside those of men in the historical record, it cannot really be called history at all. There is no Joubert family archive in Reading Room in London, nor was there a ship called the Gau. The wine farm La Justice in Olifantshoek, owned by the fictitious Barenton family, does not and never did exist, nor does Klein Bethlehem. All the characters in the Map of Bones, unless otherwise specified, are imagined, though inspired by people who might have lived. Ordinary women and men struggling to survive and flourish against a backdrop of religious war and displacement. Then, as now. Kate Mosse, Chichester, April 2024.
Prologue. La Rochelle, May 1687. Rue des Gentilshommes, the 18th of May, 1687. Suzanne could hear them rampaging through the house. More like animals than men, except animals did not destroy wantonly. These men, dragonards, were uncouth and violent bullies. Catholic soldiers billeted with Protestant households and given license by the king to intimidate, humiliate, abuse, thieve. Huguenots were no longer citizens in their own country. Kill or be killed. She froze at another huge crash below. A splintering of wood, a cacophony of metal striking the tiled floor of the main hall, discordant chimes. She clenched her fists, suspecting the lawless soldiers had pulled down the lantern clock from the wall, simply because they could. Suzanne had never before felt such rage, such fear, as over this past week. Dragonards had been coming to the Rue des Gentilshommes several times a day on the pretext of searching for Huguenot malefactors, as they called them. Then,